There's types of bad listeners. There's things that we can do that just aren't going to work. They're going to cause frustration, anger, sadness, and possibly behaviors. So we're going to talk about a couple different kinds of bad listeners, and as we do this, think about yourself. Do you ever do any of these things? If you do, how can you stop yourself? The first one is the pseudo-listener. And I think it is very easy to be a pseudo-listener if you're a caregiver, especially if you're busy. A pseudo-listener is somebody who maybe gives the correct nonverbal skills. You'll look at the person and make eye contact, and you'll nod, and you'll smile, and you'll offer facial expressions, but you're not really listening. You're going through things in your mind. You're thinking about what you have to get done. You're thinking about what you need to do tomorrow. And what is wrong with this type of listening? You're not present. They could have been sharing some very important information with you about what they need, about how they feel, about what they want to do. And if they would go back and ask you, so how do you feel about that? If you're a pseudo-listener and you weren't really listening, there's no way for you to properly communicate back because you have no idea what your loved one was really saying. And as a caregiver, that's why we're there. Selective listening. A selective listener may be somebody who's really busy and they just listen to pieces. As their loved one talks, they just pick out the things that they maybe think are important or the things that they want to deal with. We've stressed this a lot. Everything that your loved one says is important, especially if you're investigating, if you're trying to find triggers, if you're looking for the meaning. You need to hear all of those parts so you can pick out what is relevant. If you're only selectively listening, you're missing out on half of the conversation. Stage huggers. A stage hugger is common for somebody who just may not have their needs met. They need more attention. They need to be more involved. They maybe need more relationships with other people. So when they're listening to what their loved one is saying, but not to encourage them, not to ask more questions, not to build rapport, to take the relationship deeper. They're listening because they're trying to figure out when they can insert things about themselves. Oh, that reminds me of the time that I did this. Or I think that's so wonderful. I'm actually really great at this. Let me tell you about what I usually do. Stage huggers like to just turn that conversation around and focus on themselves. And again, as the caregiver, we're focusing on our loved one, on who we're caring for. The insulated listener. As a caregiver, this is really important. I know that we are not all comfortable with conflict, with stress, with maybe seeing our loved ones sad or angry. And if you're an insulated listener, as soon as those emotions start to come up, you shut down. Somebody says they're sad or they're upset or they're angry and you just can't emotionally handle it, so you tune out and you don't listen to the rest of that conversation because you don't feel you can emotionally handle it. As a caregiver, we need to listen. We need to know why they felt that way, because if we know that, we can hopefully prevent it from happening again in the future. So the biggest thing is to remember it's not you that your loved one is upset or angry or frustrated with. So often it's the disease that they have, it's the loss of independence, it's the things that they don't have control over. And as the caregiver, unfortunately, a lot of the anger will come back at you. So stay calm and remember this isn't about you, it's about the disease. And it's very important to deal with these feelings when they come up. Defensive listeners and ambushers. This is somebody who is listening to the conversation, but somehow it's still all about them. They're afraid that the person is talking about them, that they're insinuating that they're not doing a good job, that they never do anything right. Or maybe they'll save this information and they'll try to use it to their advantage in the future. Again, you're not here to play games. You're here to properly communicate and to support your loved one. The last thing you want to do is try to remember what they said so you can use it later in an argument. And lastly, the insensitive listener. The insensitive listener is listening to what somebody is saying, but they're not properly picking up on the feelings, on the emotions, on what the person needs. So they may hear somebody say that they're upset or that they're sad, but they're able to just blow it off. Or they process that, but they don't think about why. What could they do in the future to make that better? So these are some very common types of bad listeners or poor listeners. And if you see yourself in pieces of these, don't feel guilty. I see myself in pieces of these. But remember that, focus on that, and try to catch yourself if you find yourself doing that when you're talking to your loved one.